Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is Burning Questions. And the topic that set the internet on fire this week is what does Ukraine have to offer to the world in terms of economy? And we're going to be attempting to answer that today.
Hello, my name is Olga Slubinska. I'm International Relations Director in the think tank branch of the Kyiv School of Economics. Um, over the last couple of years, the main focus of our institute is basically to do everything and to help in any way to win the war, make Russia pay, and make Ukrainian economy to recover, including the analysis and finding investment opportunities in the critical sectors for Ukraine, which includes, of course, the critical raw materials. Over the last year, we published together with the Ministry of the Economy Ukrainian Investment Guide, which is basically the guide that consists and includes the deep analysis of Ukrainian economy, all important sectors in the Ukrainian economy, as well as 95 investment opportunities or kind of investment options where Ukrainian or international investors can choose and invest in. And critical raw materials is one of the sectors there, like meaning that is important, crucial, and very important for Ukraine and to
That's amazing. Actually, since you're talking about investment opportunities, I'm assuming these are mostly for corporations or for larger bodies. What would be the best investment opportunities off the top of your head for like an average American who likes to, play with the stock market or invest in order to build his wealth?
so stock market is not something that's really on the plate at the moment for Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The capital markets are virtually closed for Ukrainians and virtually closed to invest in Ukraine. There were a number of restrictions since the beginning to kind of withdraw the investment, virtually limited the investor participation in Ukrainian. Plus, due to kind of compliance reasons, Iranian investors, they're just not allowed to invest in the country where the full-scale invasion of war is happening in the moment. Thus, I would say that kind of capital markets and stock opportunities would like appear once the ceasefire agreement is reached or once the kind of active phase of war basically is over. However, we should all be prepared for that and kind of investigate what's on the ground and what's available to be ready to step in once the time comes.
Amazing. And then you briefly touched on the raw materials. So, as someone who's lived in America for a long time, who has now seen the new president and watches the news every day, a lot of people are sort of banking on Donald Trump to end the war in Ukraine, which I don't agree with, but that's not the point here. Trump really loves money, and it seems like one of the biggest conversations at the moment is exchange of raw materials and resources for military support. Well, one, do you think it's ethical? Two, do you think do you think it's sustainable? And three, what are your thoughts about it?
Let's probably start from the beginning and kind of have a big kind of dive in why Ukraine and why critical raw materials in Ukraine. So, o- over the last couple years, the interest toward the critical raw materials as an industry overall in the world increased dramatically. Why? Because there is kind of clean energy transition. The green energy is developing. The sustainable energy is developing. Number of advanced technology, real tech, high tech, electric cars, vehicles, and even in our kind of everyday um, life, we use number of the kind of things that use critical raw materials or elements of the critical raw materials in one or other way, including cell phones, gadgets, computers, medical equipment, and medical stuff, including even like spacecrafts, aircrafts, airplanes, defense systems. So
Elon Musk's
all of this
cars as well. Lithium, yeah.
yes, yes, of course.
Sorry.
So all of these industries are using critical raw minerals in different ways. Ukraine is rich of these resources. It holds like deposits of 22 out of EU recognized for critical raw materials. Before the full-scale invasion, it was one of the global top producers of some of these critical raw materials, including like titanium, graphite, and some others. So now, if we kind of break down to some, do we have it? Why we use it? So one of the critical raw materials that I would like to mention is titanium, that is used in the aircraft, space, medical implants, and military equipment. Ukraine holds the largest titanium reserves in Europe and produces around 6% of the supply. Then lithium and graphite. So imported elements that are used in the electric cars for the batteries. Some of them are used for the smartphones. Important elements for the renewable energy storage. In this lithium, Ukraine holds 1/3 of reserves. In graphite, Ukraine ranks number 5 globally in graphite reserves. Another element I want to touch is uranium that can also be allocated to those reserves. It used in nuclear power plants, where it helps countries to reduce dependence on the fossil fuels. And Ukraine has the largest uranium reserves in the world. So all of that makes basically Ukraine as a very important kind of destination and partner, potential partner for further cooperation investments and kind of all negotiations that connects to the use of the critical raw minerals. Moreover, there are kind of another, I would say, important reasons why it is important in the moment, as like China now has around 80% the global producer power in the world in this area, and to kind of decrease the dependence on production, Ukraine can be one of the good alternatives. And the last like kind of reason, but not the least, that I want to mention is the Russian invasion, aggression, and the war. So Russia is another player in this market. But because of the war in invasion, many European producers and Western countries are now kind of break the links with Russia, and they need to, especially in titanium and uranium cooperations and partnerships, and they need to find like another partner that would be subsidized for like these two countries that they mentioned above. And Ukraine here presents. And coming back to your question, so like with regards to the recent um, statements that we heard, so like Ukraine is definitely interested in new partnership. Ukraine and investments, and Ukraine needs protection. So I would say that we haven't seen. So we have heard only the statement and the agreement that will come behind the statement that will actually include the cooperation between the countries, it will have much more details behind. So at this stage I would say that Ukraine uh, is very interested to get protection. It needs and very interested to get new cooperation business and partnerships both with the US EU companies to increase those corporations, and we would need to kind of establish, investigate, and structure those partnerships in a way that it would be beneficial for both sides.
So, since we've talked about the amount of reserves that Ukraine has, and you touched on Russia, I guess I have two questions here too. For those that don't know, where are, because you conveniently have a map of Ukraine right behind you, where are most of Ukraine's raw material deposits located?
So actually, yes, we had the map. We recently like kind of structured the map, and exactly the points you can see on map is the location of those critical raw materials reserves that are in Ukraine, and you see most of them, or big part of them, are on the Ukrainian held territory. So the
Hmm.
red zone is basically which is now occupied by Russia. There are some of the reserves allocated there, but if we like look broadly, there are many McDonald's on the Ukrainian held territories. Some of them located close to Europe, which makes very convenient and very kind of attractive partnership with any kind of location, transportation, service needs to be done, and like any further communication with the European countries.
Does Ukraine present competition for Russia in this market?
So I would say that this question basically we can look at it from different angles. So because of the acts that Russia done invading Ukraine, for many companies it's no longer an option to work with the Russia.
Hmm.
And as I said, Ukraine is a very good option to establish partnership. So, yes, in this context, Ukraine is a very good kind of new strategic partner that can enter the market, the global market, establish new partnership links and strengths.
Well, I suppose where I was going with this more is before the full scale invasion, before a lot of companies weren't able to not work with Russia, would Ukraine's, because I guess there's so many reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine, right? And I think that a lot of people don't realize that part of that reason is also because of how rich Ukraine is in raw minerals and because of how much Russia can get out of Ukraine if it holds this territory. So my question is rather dating back to pre-2022. Would Ukraine be a large competitor to Russia and a big threat in the area of raw materials and partnerships?
So let me comment briefly on take them out of Ukraine. So, like all these deposits, this is not something
Well,
that
yeah, yeah,
can be easily taken.
not
Yes,
not
yes.
move, but
So
as in like
just
if yeah.
as a like, I'll come back to your question, but just at the technological process, it takes several years to investigate and several years to extract, and then like it comes the processing kind of processes. So I would say yes, Ukraine was a threat, and that could be one of the reasons. Uh, but as you mentioned, there are many more behind. But of course, the being rich with these resources making Ukraine an attractive destination for everyone, including Russia in a bad way.
How has the market changed, or how has the interest changed in Ukraine and its natural resources since before 2022 and after, and now that we have so much international attention?
So I would say that the whole structure of the Ukrainian economy has dramatically changed since start of the invasion, since the start of the full-scale war. They lost most of the metallurgical areas. We lost some of the coal mines, part of the regions, some agricultural facilities. So, like in other way, in Ukraine, the military and defense sector is increasingly developing, and it will kind of gain more and more share in the Ukrainian GDP ultimately. So, of course, like restructuring the whole economy, making all those kind of potential reserves and areas and critical raw materials sector like revalued and regain its attractiveness. Because now, that's not just because of the Ukrainian events, but Ukrainian events itself also kind of pushed um, all sides. So Ukrainians, Ukrainian government, and Ukrainian partners like in Europe or in US. revalue what's important, what we have now, and what can be developed. And now Ukraine is cannot be kind of valued isolated out of the whole world. Uh, One of the main processes that unworthy Ukraine is kind of aligning all industries with the norms in terms of the integration process. Doesn't meaning integrating Ukrainian businesses in the European value chain, create new partnerships, new kind of technologies, new joint venture to see how Ukrainian products will be kind of in demand with European customers, to see how Ukrainian production facilities and raw materials can help European production facilities to enhance, create the new kind of sectors, areas, companies, so on and so forth. Thus, I would say that increasing demand for these high-tech technologies, military equipment, defense technology, electric cars in the whole world makes this industry interest and kind of attractiveness increase dramatically compared to the before full-scale invasion.
If Ukraine were to strike up a partnership with the United States based on, like, say, the rumors or based on what's been discussed, right, to exchange raw materials, well, sort of like to exchange industry or access to raw materials for military support, how would that look like? And why would that be beneficial for the United States, for like an average American?
First of all, that means that like it decreases the dependence on China production, diversifies the sources of kind of supplies that US has now. Plus, it gives the new strategic partnership plus access to the new resource. So like for US customer or like every US citizen that would mean the new partner, less dependence of China and Russia, and kind of new opportunities, new technology. Because Ukraine is also well known in kind of its engineering knowledge, technology based assessment, and now it has unique kind of skills on in defense area that they gain basically in practice. How that can look like, like again, like this partnership should be beneficial for both sides. So for Ukraine, it needs to be kind of strategic partnership. Ukraine is in like the main goal, basically, not just to sell the critical raw minerals and extraction itself, but also go to the processing industry and create higher value added products. So any joint partnership and with US partners will help to do that. Plus, this industry needs a lot of investments and investments for a long period of time, because like this feasibility, pre-feasibility studies and extraction and processing of all those deposits, it takes like many years. So I would say that strategic partnership for some period of time that will be structured on the beneficial terms for both countries, um, which will give a very clear procedure how to access these deposits, who will kind of gain the rights and which products will be ultimately created. That will be very kind of beneficial for both countries.
So, how much of Ukraine's potential in production is being used right now, or was being used before the full-scale invasion? And also, I guess for an average viewer who's looking at this, right, we're talking about percentages of world deposits, and we're talking about these kind of obscure amounts. But what is that in monetary value? Like, how much money does Ukraine hold in raw materials? I understand that that's kind of like a funny, silly question, but as in like what type of wealth are we talking about? Because I think that percentages to most people mean very little, you know?
Yes. And there is a good reason behind that. So over the last couple months, I think in the media there were speculations on very different, like from thousands of trillions that like on the type of the kind of estimation that you can use. But the truth behind that, like no one really knows the exact number because to kind of estimate that, so the estimations of those deposits was done many years before, and like different technologies were used. So to understand what's really available, what type of there are different types of the critical raw minerals. So they can be found in different forms. The
Mhm.
chemical the chemical formula that can be found in Ukraine or in other countries. So, like to make the actual and estimate, Ukraine needs to do another kind of round of estimation and geological exploration and research assessment, and actually, like that requires some time. So, like I would say that again, in the media, you can find different numbers. Probably they are more or less correct. But to give you the correct amount, it needs to be investigated and researched and explored again.
Okay, so then that relates to the other part of my question as to how much of all of this potential, right? It seems like this industry is very underdeveloped in Ukraine at the moment, as in there is a lot of potential there and there is a lot to explore, but very little of it is being used and is being oh my gosh, very little of it is being used and very little of it is being dug up. Very little of it is being
Yes,
produced. Yeah,
extracted. Yeah.
extracted. Yes. So, what's the percentage, or like, what's the amount of this industry that's actually currently functioning, working, and being extracted?
Okay. So, like, let me put it in this. Um, the resources. So the like the probably the most accurate estimates are the potential in there that we have will really actually, like there is no exact numbers, no one really tells, and the problem is that most of the numbers deposits are like now closed for the like public audience, and that's a number of kind of reforms and in this area needs to be taken, and one of them is to restoring and modernizing the geological data access and reopening Ukraine digital geopolitical portal and database base, so it can be used for broader audience. It can be re-estimated. It can be kind of sum up together. So most of the data and kind of needs to be aligned with the international standards. So we all can use the same relative figures that is used in the all like other world that will make those kind of estimations, deposits for each of the components and materials credible for international investors and trust. And again, like another element of investigation and funding, political exploration and research assessment to meet the final number.
How does Ukraine protect its national interest in terms of the extraction of raw minerals? And because I guess this would be a very complicated question if I just pose it that way. So let's say there's so much interest. so much interest in this field right now, right? There is interest in the EU, there is interest in the US, because as we've just discussed, there is a lot of potential to become less energetically dependent on Russia, on China, on a lot of other things, right? So obviously the EU and the US is interested, and as we're understanding, the sphere in Ukraine is underdeveloped, so there is a lot of room to sort of invite foreign investments to come in and take place. How does Ukraine protect its own national interests in this in the face of this, and also how do you avoid a massive circle of corruption kind of developing from this situation? Because as we know, when we're talking about very large amounts of money, which that's essentially what it comes down to, right? A lot of very negative and dark stuff tends to come out, especially when you have such a field that's kind of like a diamond in the raw, where you haven't even started exploring how far it goes yet.
So I would say that brain is now experience a fresh wave of interest toward this sector, realizing how important it is and that the regular mechanisms, policies that will kind of um, help the industry to develop in the natural way, like with a time, I don't know, frame of 5, 10 years, is not really what Ukraine needs. The demand is high, and like the policies needs to be changed to make sure that everything is kind of developed as quickly as possible, and investors' interest that persist at the moment is what can actually materialize in some actual investments explorations and procedures like new opportunities, new like factories already in the coming years. So Ukraine unfortunately cannot afford to wait maybe 4 years to make sure like well that's the industry will develop in a natural way. So because of that, now, Ukraine is kind of revising its policies and incentives. As I said, like the industry requires a lot of support, a lot of um, investments, and also it needs some policies needs to be revised. So what Ukraine is doing at the moment is kind of revising and setting new like factoring policies. Um, New incentive and support mechanisms to encourage local producers and investors to come to Ukraine. So, open mechanisms to manage all the licenses and for full, like, kind of openness, attractiveness in this area, creating incentives and like new partners, new diversify the kind of partners, work both with US and other side, um, and as well as kind of move from pure extraction to more like kind of to processing industry. So thus it's a device the companies, both local and external, like international, will develop processing area.
Gotcha.
So I would say like what can like how the corruption can be prevented. Transparent mining license processes. Uh, like open auctions, open bidding, uh, very close and open monitoring processes,
Hmm.
public monitoring using like kind of modern technology, and like implementing and aligning everything with the international standards that is clear and visible for all partners.
Gotcha. And then this topic is going to be moving away from the raw materials, but a lot of, I guess, misinformed people in the United States and all over the world say things like Ukrainian economy is dead, Ukrainian economy doesn't function, Ukrainian economy is absolutely not self-sufficient, and the only reason Ukraine is standing it's because the U.S. completely makes its economy function. What do you have to say to that?
So first of all, Ukraine has shown very, I mean, a good resilience, unprecedented resilience taken into account only them. So you can imagine that, like, before the full scale invasion, we have the budget that was kind of financed with the taxes, other kind of mechanisms. With the start of the war, the spendings for their kind of military area basically increased this Ukrainian budget spendings almost twice. And they're just increasing with the years of war. Of course, that created, like, while the revenues from just decreased or contracted because of the, like, we lost the territories, we lost the industries, the companies had kind of some interruptions in their operations. So of course, you that created um budget deficit. Ukraine, which was Ukraine needed to rely on the international donor support. At the same time, Ukraine has implemented a precedented number of reforms for the archives. And now, with all the kind of support packages that Ukraine is receiving from the international donors, uh, Ukraine committed to perform over than 500 different dedicated forms of tasks the next half years. A third of them was already implemented. Plus, there is like Ukrainian government is now creating incentives for the business. Businesses restored its operations after Honduras stopped
Yeah.
pause at the beginning of the war. So, I would say that Ukraine is still dependent on the international support. Probably with the recent financial package from the era, the 2025 would be the first year when Ukraine has enough funding to, like, fund the budget needs already at the beginning of the year, enough commitments. But of course, like, structural, I mean, the other question is that to recover and restore and balance its budget, Ukraine grow its economy. So the next challenge to be to get enough kind of investments to make the economy grow and make the businesses and and kind of new companies to be established in Ukraine, revenues, taxes, and like balance the economy.
Okay. I guess my last question would be personally to you. What fields in the Ukrainian economy do you wish people paid more attention to? I'll give you an example. I'll give you a bit of a sort of what I mean by that, right? So, for instance, a lot of people don't know that, say, if you want to produce something in the US, there are not that many textile factories and there are not many brands that are able to produce their own clothing in the United States because it's expensive. There are very few places where you can do that. While in Ukraine, for instance, and I guess people don't know that, people that are even into fashion and things like that, most of our Ukrainian brands produce their clothing locally because Ukraine has a huge textile and factory industry that seems like no one in the world has any idea. You know, you think Italy, you think textiles and clothing, you think Ukraine, you don't think that. So that's something that I like to tell people as like a new thing that they find out. Which industries do you think are underrepresented, and which industries do you want people to pay more attention to?
So there is a bit like different angles for this question. So I have my personal angle, and like following your answer, I would like to add that Ukrainian local producers like clothing, jewelry, and like it's mostly like SME business, not large businesses, but it's developing very, very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ukrainians are eating very kind of unique, high quality uh, things and stuff that didn't exist before, and that's rapidly developing over the last couple of years. But in terms of kind of attraction of the international interests and investments, I would say the top sectors would be mill tech or high tech,
Hmm.
so the technology, the critical raw materials that's linked to that, energy, of course, because Ukraine need in the um, and like decentralized energy, new energy technology and system is very high,
Hmm.
and probably processing overall, including kind of agriculture and different types of manufacturing activities that we hope will be appearing in the brain in the upcoming years more and more.
And then from your personal perspective, because that was more
Well,
of,
from my personal
yeah,
yeah, from my personal perspective, I already kind of started from there
yeah,
and from that. So, um, I think one of the important things that happened with Ukraine, one of the positive outcomes of this horrible war, is that Ukrainians are coming back to its culture,
yeah,
and it's more and more appearing in all the things that's produced in Ukraine. That everything is done by heart and with Ukrainians. So that's why I'm kind of started with some things that's produced manually as a jewelry, maybe clothing, maybe arts, and things like that. And there are a lot of that appearing in the market at the moment, which has this national identity, uh, which has this like Ukrainian spirit. So there is an opportunity to come to Ukraine and buy some things that never before, that will translate you the Ukrainian ideology, spirit, I don't know, uh, and I think that's very, very value and one of the best outcomes that we have now because of this horrible.
amazing. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for answering all of my questions. And of course, thank you for informing our audience a little more about Ukraine and what Ukraine has to offer to the world.
Sure, sure. Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, hopefully you learned a lot from this conversation. I certainly did. And if you enjoyed it and you would like to hear more conversations like it, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, send it to a friend, turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next video comes out. And of course, leave your questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, or anything that's on your mind in the comments down below because I read all of them. I really appreciate them and I enjoy talking to you guys. Till next time.